In today's episode, I want to get underneath a dynamic that, to me, is really at the heart of what it means to reclaim the gentle man. And what I'm talking about is, honestly, it's at the core of so many couples' struggles. And it's also a big reason why a lot of men have a hard time declaring what it is that they want, really going after what they want, knowing and pursuing these things that give life meaning, that give their life substance and richness. What I want to talk about is this block that is preventing so many of us from the sense of aliveness that we know is so close, but that can feel so elusive. So I want to identify what this block is, what this dynamic is, this trap that we fall into. And by the end of it, give you an image of what it looks like to actually change this. What it looks like to, from the inside out, change the dynamic of your struggle in relationship. Change your inability to know and to go after what you want. And you might be surprised. You might not understand right away how these things are connected, but I promise you they are. And if you keep listening, I think you might be able to immediately implement this practice and see some powerful results. And really the purpose here is that when you have this sense of dread or anxiety or purposelessness in life, when it starts to creep up on you, you can actually work with that energy. You can work with it so that you can use it to grow instead of suffering in it. And I hope that by the end of this, you can also see really clearly how exactly you can lead real and meaningful change right from within your relationship, starting just with you. Stay tuned. This is Reclaiming the Gentle Man. I'm Dave Lashansky. So the dynamic that I want to talk about today is, in many ways, it's the engine behind the rat race. It is the grease on the hamster wheel. It is the water we're constantly treading without really knowing it, without realizing how exhausting treading water actually is. It is a quiet, mostly unconscious, but constant belief about the path of growth, about what transformation looks like. So, what's this belief? What's this dynamic I keep circling around? Okay. There's actually two sides to it. And one side is this. It's this belief that action equals transformation. That without action, we cannot transform. This is at the heart of grind and hustle culture. It is the masculine way, right? It's the heart of this vision of a real man that most of us, consciously or not, hold. And it's not a complete picture. And it's no longer serving us. So that's one side, right? Action equals transformation. The idea that we can't transform without action. And on the other side of this belief is this. It's that acceptance equals complacence. That when we soften into something, when we offer grace and space and compassion, that we will lose our drive to change it. That we'll lose our momentum and our forward motion. Right? This idea that accepting something will make it permanent. It will make us complacent if we accept it. Sometimes this is a conscious thought. Sometimes it's not. But most of us operate from this instinct that if we accept something that we don't like, we are resigning to it. We are instilling it as a permanent fixture of us. So when things are tense, when we're stressed, when what we care about, like our job or our family or our relationship, is in tension, most of us start to operate from this, that we cannot accept what is happening because it will keep it here. It will make it permanent. It will keep us stuck. And to an extent, this makes sense, right? This is how we're wired, and in many ways, it's a brilliant way of being when you're in real danger, right? This idea that we need to be in action to be safe, that we need to be in action to transform a certain situation when we're in danger is true. That's fact. And that's good wiring, and we're not trying to change that. But when this pattern, when this thought process, when this belief gets in the way of connection in a relationship, it needs to be addressed. Because the thing is, in relationship, we're often in this belief, in this pattern, in this rat race of thinking that real danger is happening to us, when in reality, we're in a conflict. So what I'm here to reframe is that when we're in relationship, when we're noticing this tendency to be in action to create change, when we notice this belief that if we accept something, that we will be condoning or making something permanent in our relationships, something we don't want to be here, we can learn to work underneath this pattern to actually change it. That we can offer ourselves and our partners space and compassion, stillness and non-action in order to resolve and transform things that we want to change. This is how compassion can change us. How stillness and grace leads to the most potent, most lasting, most powerful kind of change. And the cool part is that when we enact this for ourselves and in our relationships, this is where we witness the fullest, wholest version of our true power. And this paradox, this thing we do where we confuse compassion for complacency, is where we're going to begin. Because really, compassion is the doorway to transformation. When we try to stop amputating what is wrong with us, we realize that we can actually lead it. So many of us spend so much time judging and characterizing and trying to abolish or obliterate parts of us that we don't like. But the thing that actually changes us fastest and most effectively and with the best and lasting results isn't about what we remove from ourselves. It's what we finally choose to see with tenderness and curiosity. That is the change. That is what changes us. So when I talk about being with compassion, this is what I'm talking about. Seeing what is here, what is showing up with tenderness and curiosity, holding space, getting still in it, even when it's uncomfortable. So this might be really esoteric. So I want to give you an example, right? So let's take a stereotypical hot-headed man. Okay? This man wants to change how he shows up in conflict. He doesn't want to escalate things, and he sees that his temper is what kind of raises the stakes. So what does he do? He learns to meditate. He starts doing cold plunges, right? He learns breathing techniques. He learns to walk away during fights to cool off. And all of these strategies are great and they're effective, and on the surface, they seem to be really working. But what decides whether these tactics, right, these kind of mediating the temper tactics, what decides whether that's effective or just a Band-Aid is the intention behind it. Is this man doing these things to get rid of the parts of him that are quote unquote hot-headed? Or is he doing these practices to get closer to it? To understand this part of him that gets heated. There is a massive difference between trying to avoid an outburst, to try to circumvent your temper, and learning how to be present with the part of you that gets inflamed. Learning what this part of you is all about, learning what it's trying to do for you, what it's afraid of, is a totally different process than avoiding it, and it is what creates transformation. When we approach this part of us to squash it or abandon it, we're treating it like a threat. And that makes sense. In many ways, it is a threat. It can be a threat to your relationship. Maybe it's made people leave in the past. But when we approach it with curiosity, when we slow down, when we make an effort to get to know what this hot-headedness is trying to do for us, when we treat it like a messenger, like an ally, we open a portal to change. This is where transformation lives. This is where those strategies become truly effective. Because here's the thing. If we're doing these things to avoid or to squash or to crush or to ignore the parts of us we don't like, the parts of us that show up and cause problems, it will find a way to come out. If not in this fight, in the next. If not in this relationship, in some other part of your life. Because there is truly no way to know if this part of you is gone. So in my work and the work of reclaiming the gentle man, I don't focus on removing parts. I don't know if it's possible. I don't think anyone can know if something is truly gone from within, even if it might feel like it in the moment. But the work that I do is focused on leadership, self-leadership. Because while we cannot know if something's been eliminated from our inner world, we absolutely, positively can feel, viscerally feel what it's like to lead these parts of us. When we learn to lead this hot-headedness, this temper, when we learn to become the one that takes charge inside, even when things are hot, not to control, but to lead. We feel it. We know it. In that moment when something that once owned you rises up and you stay with it and you breathe and you listen and you stop trying to abandon yourself and you step into that posture of leadership, that is what transformation is made of. That is what true relationship growth starts with. Learning to lead the parts of us that get activated. So what happens when we take this approach. Let's stay with the hot-headed man for a second. And let's go inside. Let's slow the dynamic enough to actually witness what's happening. What happens when he does decide to lead, when he uses the tactics he's learned to run in the past in an attempt to get to know himself better. So let's say he's in conflict and he's about to lose it. He's about to shout. He's about to get upset. He's about to say something he doesn't want to or really mean, but he just feels like he can't help but do it. I want you to imagine what would happen if, in that moment, he chooses to slow down, to detach from what he's certain is true, just enough to witness what's happening inside for him. He feels his chest tighten. He feels his voice wanting to rise from his throat. His mouth is drying out. He's got all these clear signals in his body of this escalation that's happening. And so he says to his partner he needs a few minutes. And he goes into another room. And he just sits with himself. He closes his eyes, noticing all of these parts of his body. And when he is alone, when he's sitting with himself and noticing what's happening inside for him, he hears this part of him that is screaming inside of his chest. And the words it's saying is that he has to win. He has to be right. He has to. He has to defend himself. He can't let her say this. And instead of using these cues as a sign that he has to shut down, right? He has to turn off this switch, this anger that's boiling inside, that's screaming, literally screaming inside of him, to distract himself, to get away from this part that is intense, that he probably doesn't like very much. Instead, this time, he chooses to slow everything down to the speed of molasses. He breathes into the sensations. He breathes into the screaming part of his chest, and he turns toward these screams internally and acknowledges it and welcomes it. He says something like, "I know you're trying to protect me. I know this feels scary. I got you." And then something softens. Something inside shifts. Maybe a memory arises of when he had to do this before, when these screams came up before. And he sees that younger version of himself struggling. And he chooses to hold that part of him too, like a father would. He doesn't get swept into the memory, but he holds firm in a state of gentle awareness, fueled with powerful compassion. And he sees this screaming part of him, and he sees this younger version of him, and just holds them, welcomes them, offers them grace and space and compassion. And slowly but surely, the screaming starts to quiet. The tension he feels in his body starts to lessen. He finds more and more bandwidth in this present moment as he stays with and gets to know and reparents these younger parts of him, these parts of him in pain, these parts of him that are struggling. And eventually he feels this resurgence of energy, this newfound compassion for whatever ignited this issue in the first place, for his partner, this new desire to connect. And because he took the time to be with what was inside of him, to hold what we found there with compassion, instead of acting swiftly to squash or stifle it, he comes back to his partner and shares what's happened for him. He owns his actions and he shares what hurt, what started it for him, what he felt. And in doing this, he leads the transformation of that conflict into connection by leading himself back to himself, by using the power of space and compassion, of stillness, to create change. A gentle man does not run from himself, and he doesn't run from conflict. What he does do is that he leads himself deeper inside to open the gifts that are lying in wait there. So today, in this episode, what I want to leave you with is this. The parts of you you've been trying to outrun, the parts of you you don't like, that you wish would go away, that you speak to dismissively, cruelly, the parts of you you wish weren't a part of you. They're not the problem. The problem is that you don't have a relationship with them. That you use action as a way to avoid them or try to kill them off or to pretend that they're not there. Because there's a story that we've been sold that says if you have compassion for something you don't like, something you don't love, that thing will own you, that it'll keep you small. That if you're kind to something inside of you that you think is bad, that it'll stay forever. It'll become a permanent fixture of you, and you'll get complacent, when really the opposite is true. That compassion for all parts of us is the beginning of real, sustainable, evolutionary change. The kind of change that changes everything. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Reclaiming the Gentleman. If you're interested in this kind of work and you didn't get a chance to join the initial offering of my 21-day program for men, I have good news for you. It will happen again. And right now you can sign up at daveolshansky.com to be one of the first to be notified when the doors open again. I'd love to have you. And if you're enjoying this podcast, the absolute best way that you can support me right now is to subscribe, to offer me a rating, and to share it with your friends. Share it online. Share it with someone who you think will really benefit from it. And if you're curious about some of the things that I do, what I'm talking about in the show, or if you just want to get in touch, don't hesitate to reach out. I would love to hear from you. You can contact me on Instagram or through the contact portal on daveolshansky.com. Let's connect. Until next time, thank you for listening. I'll see you in a week.